Right.
came off.
Oh, sorry, Mariana.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just gonna get started in like 20 seconds. We're gonna give everybody a chance to log in. All right, I think we have a pretty good number of people already on, so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our ICAP Refugee Immigrant Child Health Initiative and Reach Out and Read Illinois webinar titled Early Childhood Development and Mental Health in the Context of Immigration. Next slide. So this webinar is CME accredited for 1 credit hour. This is just that statement. Next slide. This is any financial disclosures for anyone that was involved in either the planning or development of this webinar. Next slide. And before we get into the main content of the webinar, we just wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about our Refugee Immigrant Child Health Initiative, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Guzman to talk about Reach Out and Read Illinois. So as I said, this is a collaborative effort between Richie and ROR to bring you this webinar. So Richie is a nonpartisan and pro-child initiative that we started at ICAP to serve the needs of immigrant and refugee children and their families. And so we do that through kind of 3 main pillars, which is education, such as this webinar that we're doing right now, resources both for families and clinicians, and you can find a lot of those on our webpage, which I'll put the link to in the chat. And then advocacy, like op-eds, press releases, occasionally advocating for different legislative bills. And then in addition to that, on the next slide, we also try to support our pediatrician members as much as possible with community building activities. So I just have some examples of things that we've done in 2025. So on the top left, you'll see a volunteer event at Pilsen Food Pantry. Top right is a book club that we hosted in December, actually, which was another collaboration between us and Reach Out and Read, where they discussed Tell Me How It Ends. And we are currently figuring out our book for this coming December. So if you're interested, please reach out to join the Richie listserv for more information on that later. And then under that is just one of our examples of advocacy from our Richie co-chair, Dr. Meenal Giri, from a article that she had been featured in. And we will send the slides out later, so I'm not going to read the whole quote, but you will have access to it in all of this information. Next slide. All right, so lastly, for Richie, I just wanted to plug our upcoming events. So we meet typically monthly. We try to have educational presentations at a lot of them and some other just discussions with our membership. So our next presentation will be on April 17th, which will feature the Acacia Center for Justice Court Observers Program. May will just be kind of an informal meeting and discussion with all of our members about what they're seeing on the ground and ways we can improve care for immigrant children. And then our next CME webinar will be in June, and it's titled Frameworks for Protecting Immigrant Children's Rights. And you can find all of those on our events page at ICAP. And with that, I will turn it over to Mariana to talk about Reach Out and Read a little bit. You're muted, Mariana.
Sorry. Um, Hello, I am Mariana Glusman. I am the medical director of Reach Out and Read in Illinois. And Ellie's going to talk a lot more about Reach Out and Read in more detail. But we are so proud that we have a very strong representation throughout our state. We have over 200 clinics that participate in Reach Out and Read, and we serve over 180,000 families annually. About 1 in every 3 kids in Illinois is served by our program. And we are so excited to co-host this webinar um, with Ruchi. Next slide. We also are going to be hosting a couple of other webinars. One on the effects of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences on and early relational health. Sort of thinking about it from the clinic perspective. Dr. Amy Schreiber is going to be presenting that, and she's an excellent speaker. So I really hope people will be able to come. And then we're also going to have another webinar on play, connect, and grow, building relationships and fostering development in neurodiverse children. And that's going to be the Ashley Andrade and Colleen Roscioli are going to be presenting that. Next slide. And so moving on, so coming back to today, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ellie Erickson. Over the past 10 years, Dr. Erickson has focused her career on clinical care and the promotion of early relational health in clinical spaces with a focus on how literacy and reading with young children can promote healthy attachment and development. In her roles, um, as a primary care pediatrician in clinic and in the newborn nursery, she has had the opportunity to impact children starting from the very beginning of their lives. She has a passion for evaluation and support of children's holistic development, and she centers this in her research, clinical care, community partnerships, and education of future physicians. She has served as the medical director of Duke's Reach Out and Read program for the past 8 years and has successfully had grant applications to support research on literacy interventions in the newborn period. As the inaugural Early Relational Health Fellow for Reach Out and Read, she has solidified a position at the center of national conversations on this topic. Finally, she was elected to serve as the co-lead for the Carolinas Collaborative, a cohort of academic pediatric residency programs in North and South Carolina dedicated to promoting advocacy education in pediatric residency programs. And she is also in the executive committee of the AAP's Council on Early Childhood. Dr. Erickson has dedicated her career to supporting and evaluating interventions that allow children and families to thrive, and I'm thrilled to have her here to present to us today. Thanks, Ellie. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Mariana. It's a real pleasure for me to be here as well. And as we move through today's journey, I always get very reflective in these spaces, and even just looking at my headshot bio that's on this presentation, I took. Right after the birth of my second child during COVID. And it was this weird time to like take a picture of yourself. And so I'm just thinking about again these like early experiences and the way they impact kids and as they grow up. So anyway, I always get very reflective. So I'm so excited to have the pleasure to talk to you about the incredible world of early childhood and specifically infant and early childhood mental health and how we can support families with young children in the context of a lot of things that they might be going through during that time. So I have nothing to disclose. Any of you who know me, and for those of you who I'm just meeting, know that I love books. And so naturally, I framed my talk around a children's book. I'll be using words and images from an amazing book that my colleague and friend, Dra. Mariaga, gave me called Dreamers. It's written by Yuyi Morales. The author has given me permission to use her images and words in this presentation, and the book mirrors her own immigration story with her son. So for today, our objectives are to define infant early childhood mental health and early relational health, to identify the profound and lasting impact of early life experiences, recognize the effects and the presentation of trauma in early childhood, and then recognize how intentionally supporting infant and early childhood mental health can build robust lifelong resilience. We're going to apply some tangible strategies that each of us can contribute. And I just want to say how thrilled I am to hear that Dr. Shriver is going to be coming to talk to you guys more about other ways that you can implement strategies to support families. She is really just a perfect person to have for that conversation. So I would encourage you all to attend that session. And then we'll dive a little bit more into Reach Out and Read specifically as an example of how to promote infant early childhood mental health. So let's begin with our story. I dreamed of you, then you appeared. Together, we became resplendent life, you and I. And I can't think of a better way to begin than with these beautiful words in this picture that really perfectly encapsulates the miraculous connection between a baby and their caregivers. Arms outstretched, they reach for each other as though nothing else exists in the world. And this is infant early childhood mental health. So, 0 to 3 specifically defines infant early childhood mental health as the developing capacity of a child from birth to age 5 to be able to form close and secure adult and peer relationships, to experience, manage, and express a full range of emotions, to explore the environment, and to learn. And all of this, of course, is in the context of family, community, and culture. And that last part is really, really important, right? The developmental capacity for children to form relationships, to experience and manage their emotions, and to learn is occurring in the context of their family, their community, and their culture, right? So we've got these little hands, but we've also got big hands that are right next to them. And so these kids are really operating within a community and within a context. So, another term that you may have heard, which is similar but distinct, is early relational health. And one of our colleagues, Dr. Charlo Swilly, defines early relational health as the quality of relationships co created by infants, caregivers, and other members of their families and communities from pregnancy through early childhood. Relationships themselves are not early relational health. Rather, early relational health is a feature of relationships and are those relationships that are characterized by positive shared emotionality become the context within which members co-develop mutual capacities that enable them to prevail and flourish. And so, a lot in here about co creation, co development. And again, I'd like to call your attention to this gorgeous illustration because a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So, this mother and her baby are united in touch, and baby and mom together are really in a relaxed state. Their eyes are closed, right? You can almost feel the ease in their bodies. And this is that quality that we're looking for in early relationships that allow children to flourish. And all of this reminds us that, as Dr. W.D. Winnicott said, there's no such thing as a baby. There is a baby and someone, right? Infants and young children exist because of and in the context of the caregivers in their lives. And as such, the experiences of those around them impact their development as much as their own experiences do, right? These babies are not existing in a vacuum. They are existing really dynamically and in connection to all the things that are going on around them. So many of us are familiar with the tremendous work that's been done over the last few decades, solidifying our knowledge about the critical brain development that occurs beginning at and, in fact, preceding birth, right? So, over 1 million neural connections are formed every second in the first few years of life. And that rapid and miraculous development, again, is not occurring in a vacuum. This tremendous brain growth is occurring within the context of a child's physical health. Whoops, back we go. Within the context of a child's physical health, their ongoing development, their social and emotional health, right? That early relational health part, the relationship with their parent or caregiver, that parent or caregiver's own well being, and the physical environment around them. And we as pediatricians and pediatric care providers spend a lot of time focused on physical health and traditional domains of development like gross motor, fine motor skills, and language acquisition. But we often spend less time getting curious about these other domains that in reality are just as impactful on a child's development. And while many children grow up in relatively stable environments, many do not. And so, as we continue our story and listen to the words, I'd like you to pay attention to mom and baby in each of these images. One day, we bundled gifts in our backpack and crossed a bridge outstretched like the universe. And when we made it to the other side, thirsty, in awe, unable to go back, we became immigrants. Migrantes, you and I, the sky and the land welcomed us in words unlike those of our ancestors. So I'd love for people to put in the chat as you were looking at these images and hearing these words, what did you notice about mom and baby? And I can kind of click through and go back and same expression on their faces. Yeah, curious eyes. Mom is holding the baby the whole time. They're curious, they're dreaming, they're together, right? There's love and attention. Yeah. So, unfortunately, it's far too common for children and their caregivers to experience adverse events. And specifically, SAMHSA defines trauma as an experience that is life threatening, physically or emotionally harmful, an event that can be single, right? A one time occurrence or a series of multiple occurrences over time. And the effects are adverse and lasting, there are long term consequences. Right. And so the term trauma is being used more and more these days. But when it comes to infants and young children, it's especially important to think about how many things can be life threatening or physically or emotionally harmful. Right. So for babies and young children who are nearly, if not 100% dependent on their caregivers, lots of experiences may be interpreted by their developing brains as dangerous. Right? After all, what is separation anxiety in an 18-month-old other than not really having a way to know that their caregiver is going to come back? Over time, they can learn, of course, but that's the point. Their experiences inform their interpretation of events, and therefore, what may or may not be traumatic, or at the very least, induce a stress response in children. And so things that we may see as, not a big deal or, oh, they won't remember. Um, a lot of these events can actually be really impactful and have effects long term. And the things, right, like we know that a mom leaving the room is not a trauma, right? But the baby has no way to really contextualize what is happening when their parent leaves the room. And so it's important to think of like what is going on in that kid's experience of what is happening, that they can't necessarily contextualize, right? I mean, this is even as simple as a baby who has gas pain, right? Who's really crying. And they're just like, if we have gas pain, we're like, oh, it's gas, it's fine. But they don't have that ability to contextualize yet, right? And so they don't know what's happening. They just know they're in pain and they should probably tell someone. So they start crying. And so I get, again, that perspective and that interpretation of the context is really important for these early life experiences. So let's shift our thinking to thinking about what happens to a body when it's under stress, right? So we can't prevent all stress, but we know there's a difference between short term exposure to stressful experiences, right, and toxic stress. So, the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine describes toxic stress as the prolonged activation of the stress response systems that can disrupt the development of brain architecture and other organ systems and increase the risk for stress related disease and cognitive impairment well into the adult years, right? So, for children, the result is the disruption of the development of their brain architecture and other organ systems, right? That have an increase in lifelong risk for physical and mental health disorders. Our bodies were not meant to bathe in these stress responses. They were supposed to be temporary, to help us get away from things, right? So, when we're talking about why this matters, all of this matters, and infant mental health matters because it physically alters the brain and it physically alters other organ systems, leading to lasting effects on health. So, what are some of those systems? I'm not going to get into all of the biochemistry of all of these, but you can read them. You can look at them later, right? But you've got neuroendocrine disruption. That amygdala structure changes, and that changes the reactivity that can heighten fear and aggression circuits. Your prefrontal cortex inhibition, that's going to impair executive function pathways. And the neurotoxicity in the hippocampus can disrupt memory formation. You can have immune and inflammatory response changes. And so you've got this activation of inflammatory markers that may inhibit different pathways for anti-inflammatory pathways. You can get disruption of the gut microbiome composition and function. You may see metabolic and endocrine changes where you're having altered hormonal axes for growth, thyroid, and puberty. You can dysregulate metabolic pathways for leptin and ghrelin, thinking about changes to responses to sugar. And then you can have these genetic and cellular impacts where sustained epigenetic changes can alter DNA transcription and accelerate telomere erosion, leading to premature cell death, right? So this is like kind of a big deal, right? This is not a big deal. Is that if we are constantly activating the stress response in young children, I mean, in anyone, right? This is not good for anybody, but it especially is not good for a developing brain. When you look at how fast those neural pathways are forming, if you put all of this disruption on top of that formation, you can see how we may be building something really different in children who are experiencing trauma. And from this, we know that childhood trauma increases the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, the immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who are exposed in very high doses have a 20-year difference in their life expectancy. Again, this is from Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, who is the former Surgeon General of California. This is a big deal, right? So what does this look like, right? Babies aren't showing up at your office saying like, girl, I'm feeling stressed, right? So what is this showing up and how does this look? And it depends on how young the child was when the stress occurred and what part of their brain was developing at that time. So in young infants whose brain stem is still developing, and I wish that, so I'm going to kind of go through these from bottom to top, but they're listed from top to bottom. And if I can figure out a way to reconfigure this slide one day so it makes more like sense, just I will find a way. But it bothers me a little bit that we're starting from the bottom and moving up, and I can't make the slide work that way, but here we are. So in young infants whose brainstem is still developing, you might see children who have differences in tone compared to other infants. They might have decreased responsiveness or poor coordination when it comes to feeding, right? So these are the kids in your office who are like, their tone is just a little off. They're either hypertonic or a little bit hypotonic. It's not enough that you're wanting to refer them somewhere, but it's enough that you're like, that baby is a little tight, right? Or kids who are having disorganized feeding patterns. And so just kind of noticing some of these things really in early infancy, it can be present. In older infants, you're going to start to see the emotional and behavioral dysregulation and relational or attachment issues, right? So remember, in our definition of infant early childhood mental health, one of the main components is a child's ability to experience, manage, and express a full range of emotions, right? And so if you've got a disruption during this infant early childhood period where they are developing these capacities, you may see disorders or dysregulation, emotional or behavioral dysregulation, or relational or attachment issues, right? So these are kids who are tantruming way beyond the sort of normal sort of accepted range of toddler tantrums, or are um, biting, hitting, being aggressive, again, in ways outside of the norms, because all kids have tantrums and all kids bite and hit. But there's a level to this that is really particularly reactive. And relational or attachment issues, right? These are the kids who either cannot be soothed and cannot go to anyone, or who will go to everyone in a way that feels a little bit different. And then in older children, you may see poor executive functioning skills or language delays, right? And again, these are all very common complaints, right? This is not like a kid who's biting. Like that's a common thing you're going to see in the office, right? It can be easy to miss that some of these things may be related to underlying traumatic experiences affecting the infant or their caregiver, right? Which in turn can affect the caregiver's capacity to provide that sense of safety and security that we all felt earlier when looking at Yu Morales's illustrations, right? And so I do not have images here of the immense trauma that's being experienced by children in our country right now. Certainly in your state as well. I'm in North Carolina. And so, thinking about what is the impact of seeing this level of violence? What is the impact of being sent to a detention center early in childhood? What is the impact of being afraid that your parent may be deported or your parent is deported? Or you are staying in the house all the time because your family is afraid to go outside and you're stuck in the house all day and everyone's real stressed around you and you don't quite know why because you're a baby. These are all things that these kids and these babies are sort of like bathing in. And it's just really around everywhere. And so, really holding this in mind in the context of what children and families are experiencing is particularly important. So, what do we do, right? We can't always prevent bad things from happening to people. And because prevention is at the core of everything we hold dear as pediatricians, it can often feel that we're helpless in the face of so much adversity impacting our patients and their families. And while it's important to know that families may have experienced some really difficult things, we can also focus on what is strong with a family, not just what is wrong, right? So just because kids are growing up in what we consider adverse circumstances doesn't mean that they can't succeed. Parents and other caregivers who are supportive have a lot of power to be buffers. So, building the skills and capabilities of all caregivers is a big deal. And ensuring that they have the skills they need to provide stable, responsive environment for children is really, really important. Right? The good news here is that there is a lot we can do to promote and protect and provide supportive environments that can significantly impact the trajectory of our patients and their families. So the negative experiences can be buffered by positive ones. And just as there's a lot of science about the impact of adversity, there's also a lot of science demonstrating the profound impact of positive experiences on the developing brain. We know that children who have parents who practice positive parenting and responsive caregiving experience epigenetic changes that lead to greater stress tolerance, more normal stress response functioning, and improved cognitive performance. When babies and their caregivers are in a calm and relaxed state that we saw earlier, the oxytocin that's released inhibits the stress response and can protect against that stress induced cell death. And through promotion and support of metabolic health, through good sleep, movement, and a healthy diet, we can reduce some of the inflammatory response that comes with toxic stress. And we all know that having social support, right, or the opposite of profound isolation that so many parents are currently feeling, can lead to a reduction in stress hormones that can buffer cardiovascular reactivity, right? And so there is a lot that we can do to buffer some of this badness. I'm here to tell you there's even better news, right? Some of these positive experiences can actually reverse the impacts of toxic stress on children. So, some MRI studies found that institutionalized children who were randomized to high quality nurturant caregiving showed normalization of the developmental trajectory of white matter structures, and that maternal support predicted hippocampal volume in school age children. So, you can see here that the children whose depression was categorized as high, but also had high maternal support, right? So that's that pink box back there. Um, had a significantly higher hippocampal volume than those without the support in that like brownie orange box in the front. But I think it's also really important to note that the children who had low depression severity over in this green box, but also had low maternal support, had similar hippocampal volume to those with high depression and high support, right? So showing, or actually even less than the ones who had high depression and high support, right? Showing that we really do want to make sure that kiddos are supported throughout, not just based on sort of, the adversity that they've experienced, but just based on the fact that they're children who need support. So, similarly, we can see that children who had experienced 4 to 9 adverse childhood experiences, but also experienced numerous positive childhood experiences, ended up doing quite well on an index of child flourishing. And as in the previous slide, these kids were doing better than the kids who experienced no adversity, but also didn't experience many positive events. So I point this out for as food for thought, right? Because even though we're talking about children who've experienced adversity, these buffering strategies can really benefit all children. So thinking about universal programs and ideas is an important one. So back to our story. There were so many things we didn't know. Unable to understand and afraid to speak, we made lots of mistakes. You and I became caminantes. Thousands and thousands of steps we took around this land until the day we found a place we had never seen before. Suspicious, improbable, unbelievable, surprising, unimaginable. Where we didn't need to speak, we only needed to trust, and we did. So fittingly, the story and the story of the place that they found was the library, right? But I would like to think about how we can be that place um, where families can feel safe. And again, just to point out this image, it's such a good parallel to the image earlier, right? But you can see this mom is reaching her most precious thing, her most miraculous baby. And now we've got arms outstretched to the librarian who's here. And how much trust it takes to have your baby stretch out toward someone and something new and different. So, from the 2021 policy statement on preventing childhood toxic stress, the authors assert that safe, stable, nurturing relationships are biological necessities for all children because they mitigate childhood toxic stress responses and proactively build resilience by fostering the adaptive skills needed to cope with future adversity in a healthy manner. We're called to action here that by focusing on the safe, stable, and nurturing relationships that buffer adversity and build resilience, pediatric care is on the cusp of a paradigm shift that could reprioritize clinical activities, rewrite research agendas, and realign our collective advocacy. And indeed, those of you who are here today are poised to do just that. And we're encouraged to center our work around the children and families we serve so that we can reimagine the care we provide to support families experience harm, and in doing so, protect our developing children. Immigrant and refugee health as a field is inspired by the human experience, informed by science, and moved forward through dedication and collaboration. Center your work around children and families, remembering that families want the best for their children. And it is on us to reimagine how we deliver care that is high quality, relevant, meaningful, and equitable, right? We can focus on what is strong, on the roots and the unique strengths and gifts that families have packed in their bags, right? When at the beginning of the story, when they packed their bags, we packed our bags with gifts. Not we packed our bags with trauma, we packed our bags with bad things, we packed our bags with fear, we packed our bags with gifts, right? And families who have experienced really difficult things and have been through immigration really bring gifts and strengths. They packed ethnic pride, they packed familialism, active coping, and optimism, right? And a lot of the things that you mentioned earlier, right? They're looking ahead, they're wide eyed, they're curious, they're excited. What positive things we said about those images, right? And their being in our offices is proof of the strengths that they carry. So, by being here, you're taking a step to learn more about how you can support children and their families. And we encourage you all to continue to pursue different strategies when you're going back to where you came from, right? And so, thinking about what you can do to welcome families. And I kind of have these in some different categories of things that we can do, right? So things that we might want to do, we can learn, right? So we're here today, so we're learning. But we can also think more about resources that are available from the National AAP office, looking into your Infant Mental Health Association. Every state has an Infant Mental Health Association that may offer trainings and may offer you an opportunity to be endorsed in infant mental health. I received my endorsement from the North Carolina Infant Mental Health Association. So if you're interested in that, I can talk more about it. There's also HOPE training, which was recently featured in the New York Times as a way to buffer adversity. We can welcome our families into our clinic using Reach Out and Read, which I'm going to talk more about in a minute. With additional signage, we can do centering, making sure we have interpreter services. We can screen for adverse childhood experiences, but also screen for positive childhood experiences to really focus on the strengths that families have. We can screen for social emotional development and mental health issues. And we can connect families to community groups and trauma informed therapists, right? And so I want to just focus on one of these changes, which is my most favorite one, and that is Reach Out and Read, which is really a fast track to joy. And so, really bringing it into the exam room, we're just going to quickly review the Reach Out and Read logic model and connect this implementation to family and clinician satisfaction. So, moving away from the book that we thought about before, right? So, take a moment to reflect on your favorite books. You've got Curious George here, which I read to my daughter last night, actually. I'm just going to put in some other little friends. Caps for Sale was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. Goodnight Moon, a classic, right? And so many of you are already familiar with Reach Out and Read, but just as a reminder, Reach Out and Read is a national nonprofit organization that's integrated into pediatric primary care. And its model champions the positive effects of regularly reading and engaging in other language-rich activities with young children. Serving over 8 million families nationally per year with 40,000 medical providers, giving out over 6 million books a year among over 6,000 clinics nationwide. And in the model, at routine health checkups from infancy through 5 years, Reach Out and Read trained clinicians talk with parents about the benefits of reading aloud and engaging with their young children, show them how to look at books and share books and talk about the stories with their infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, encourage them to cuddle up and read together at home and build routines around books, and give the child a new book to take home and keep. And during visits, providers also use the book for developmental surveillance, observing how the child and caregiver interact with the book and each other to really get into that space of what is this relationship like, right? What is the relational health that's happening in this room? And in the logic model, again, Reach Out and Read gives parents the skills and tools to create everyday moments with their young children through reading. They engage with their children through reading every day. And in that engagement, children are supported, right, through safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. And this positive impact or this positive childhood experience then has an impact on child development and a positive impact on their long-term health and well-being, right? Reading can be that buffer. Reading can be that safe space in the home when everything else is going bananas. I know it is in our house with my kiddos, right? They'll sometimes just say, Mommy, I just want to read a book for a little while, right? And that's kind of a code for like, I just want to like get snuggly and be safe for a minute. And so reading can really be that space for so many. Because as we mentioned, right, development happens within the context of relationships. And we've traditionally looked at and talked about this above the waterline, right? School readiness, early literacy skills, language and development. But really, what's happening below the waterline with these healthy relationships, security, interaction, and attention from caring adults is really what it's about. Because what is our goal really in school readiness? Our goal is to have children who've had the support, interactions, and relationships through the early years that lead to entering school like ready academically, socially, and emotionally to be in that environment. So, quote from a pediatrician implementing Reach Out and Read: reading to children improves family relationships, reduces stress, and promotes resiliency. Parents reading daily to their children may be one of the greatest protective factors for families, right? So, just some messages that we can give for parents, right? Your child will love books because your child loves you, right? You are kind of the activating thing for the book. The book doesn't read, the book doesn't talk, but you do when the book is there. From the time your baby is very young, books and reading aloud can help your baby enjoy time with you, practice language, and learn about the world. Books can help you establish routines and structures in daily life with your child, even during stressful times. The relationships and routines that you build with your child can help your child handle challenges and stress, right? So this is really different than just like books, like read books so that you can, so that they like know more words and talk better, right? This is really about handling challenges and stress and having really appropriate and reciprocal relationships. And then certainly this love of books and language and communication will help your child be ready to learn and ready to read in school. So we know from this, right? Books are fostering connection and cuddles with affection, even in stressed families. Daily routines give children a sense of security and predictability, even in stressful circumstances. You know that book is coming at bedtime. Routines can also promote parental self efficacy and work against parental depression. They balance out screen time with physical contact and interactions, and they can buffer toxic stress for children. So I just want to show a quick video about what this looks like in the exam room. And we're going to, oh, is it? Okay, it's doing something weird. But hopefully you guys can still see stuff from your screen. Let me look and see what you guys can see. Yeah, you guys aren't seeing the weirdness. You're only seeing the good stuff, which is great. So this is just a couple minutes of video, and just hold on to what you're seeing.
Hello, how are you guys?
Hello.
Oh, you're okay. Can you say okay? I think you're learning a lot. Here's a book for you. Yeah. You might remember that we like to give books out at all of our well visits because we think it's important for kids to love to read. This, that. Yeah, what do you see? Do you like to read?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we just love that the kids get the books early. We hope that you like to read with her. I don't know if there are any times of day that you might spend with her looking at a book or on the weekends.
It's mainly on the weekends that I read to her, but her mother reads to her every night.
Right.
Or all the girls.
And she's also with Grandma sometimes too.
Yes, and she reads with her throughout the day.
Great. So Dad, when she was littler, she would put everything in her mouth. You might remember we were talking about that. And now that she's older, she probably won't do it that often. She'll do it a little bit less. But every once in a while, she's still exploring using her mouth and all of her new teeth.
Yes.
And she's still going to test things. You might see that she, is doing so much better using her fingers to open the book. And she'll also be asking you to read the book. And where before she might just look at it, if she likes the book that you have or she's interested in something in it, like a cat or an animal that she sees, she might be sort of getting your attention by hitting the book. But she's just really doing great with loving that book.
Yes. It's difficult where I don't read to the girls as much as the mother.
Uh-huh.
I'm working, but I know she does use that as the calming tool just before bed. You know, that's where the two, three books, each one of the girls pick out a book, and then we'll read them all. Sometimes I stay in the bed for the story too. So we all get in the same bed, we listen to the story, then we put them to bed. But it's definitely a calming tool that we use.
Yeah, but we love that because they're learning from you how wonderful it is to be together, to be together as a family, or even just you and Nyla, and reading the books together is a really nice activity. It's different from everything else that you might do to be with them. Nyla, do you want to read the book? Yeah, show Daddy the book. You're tricky. Yeah,
Look,
go ahead.
Nana. Hello, little mouse. What are you doing? You see the mouse? That's the mouse. Oh, I see. Are you going to pick that red, ripe strawberry? The big hungry bear can smell a red, ripe strawberry a mile away. You don't like this book? Huh?
No, actually, she does like this book.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there. But I would
Hello. How
no,
are you
apparently
guys?
I'm not. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Um, so I would love to see this video is like my favorite thing in the world. And um the reason it's my favorite thing in the world is because of that moment where dad starts reading. Right. And so it's a beautiful demonstration of so much of Reach Out and Read, right? We're learning about family. We're learning about who's in the family. It's grandma, it's mom, it's the girls, it's dad. We're learning a lot about her development, right? This is a 1-year-old visit. She's doing all the 1-year-old things. But that moment where dad starts reading, right? And she's yapping the whole time, right? She's just blah, 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 blah. She's singing, she's doing her baby stuff. And he opens that book and he starts reading, and she is quiet. She is with dad. They are together. They are in their own little bubble, right? Of just like goodness. I'm seeing the chat. Yes, you all saw it too. It's beautiful. And this is what we really want for everybody, for all of our families. And this is something that Reach Out and Read can help us do. I am running low on time, so I'm just going to click through and show you guys just a couple more things. But we also know that this is good for us as clinicians also, right? So participating in Reach Out and Read is not just good for our families, it's also good for us. And so, in conclusion, the book ends with this image and these words, which I'll share with you guys to close out. Someday, we will become something we haven't yet imagined. But right now, we are stories. We are 2 languages. We are lucha. We are resilience. We are hope. We are dreamers, soñadores of the world. Thank you guys so much for your time today. We have just some reference slides, and I can't remember if there are some other slides from the team in Illinois at the end. But thank you guys for your time, and would love to take questions or open it up to conversation. Let's see. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Erickson. That was amazing. So I just put in the chat that we do have about 10 minutes for discussion. The Q&A box is open, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to add those. We have a panel of Reach Out and Read and Richie experts on, so if you have questions either regarding the content for Dr. Erickson or regarding Reach Out and Read or Richie, we're all here to answer whatever questions come up.
Ellie, I just wanted to thank you for that beautiful presentation. It's my second time watching, and it was equally moving. And I have to admit that I think I kind of teared up during the video. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful seeing the father take that. You mentioned, I think, self-efficacy, and throughout the interview he's like, well, I'm not really the one who reads, I'm not really the one who does it, but all of a sudden he just spontaneously takes over, and you see him respond, or you see the baby respond. It's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
It's my favorite video, and it's an old Reach Out and Read training video. I mean, it was a training video that I got in my training when I was an intern. Like, I mean, this baby is probably in college now, right? It is it is an old video, but and and at the time, the Reach Out and Read narrative was very much like, read to kids so that they can learn more words, and if they learn more words, they'll learn to read and they'll be academically successful. Hooray! Um, but I think that video was like my gateway into knowing like there's more to it than that. That moment is just so special and so sacred, um, that there was really something like I knew, even whenever I saw this video for the first time, like something really special is happening there. And and just from my own experience reading, having people, my parents read to me when I was a kid, or reading with my little kids, right? um it's just like it's a real special warm place where you can really feel like the physiologic changes of being in close connection with someone, right? And that soft sing song voice is soothing, and um yeah, it's a beautiful video.
Not unlike your voice delivering the lecture, I have to add.
Thank you. I hope my kids also think so when I read to them.
Your kids are very lucky. I wonder how, how do we frame this and promote reading when we know that so many of our families are truly suffering? Um, it's you mentioned some of that in your talk. I wonder if how you're managing to do that in your own practice.
And I will add to that that you don't want to make people feel like there's one more thing that they need to do, right? That that adds stress. So how you do it is really important.
Mhm. Yeah, where it's as simple as um, reading, singing, right? Singing in so many cultures is such an important thing. Storytelling generally, right? Like the book is nice to have, but just the act of telling a story is really wonderful. Even telling the story of your family and my kids love it when I tell them stories about when I was a kid. Mommy, tell us about that time you yelled at Grandpa. Like, I mean, they just it's just like all of these stories are just a really beautiful part of the day, and so um, you know, just um, that any time is good time, and that any moments of connection are good, and that there is still um, beauty and strength, right? I think so often when families are experiencing a lot of hard things, we're so focused on their adversity, and it's so hard to see the rest, right? But there really is the rest, and so being able to provide that security. I have a family I take care of, and one of the parent leaders that I work with, that family was homeless for a while, and we're staying in different shelters, and they were staying in some hotels for a while, like those extended stay hotels, and then eventually ended up in a shelter. And mom reports, this, she tells the story, and says, and the kids said, "Mommy, this is the best hotel we've ever been to." Right? Like they didn't know they were in a shelter. They thought they were in another hotel, and their parent was able to provide them with that feeling of stability and security, even in the midst of a lot of stress for their family. And I mean, we can't protect kids from all of it. Kids are very smart. They know what's happening in our world. But we can also buffer a lot of that stress. So I think that, certainly we know that a lot of families are going through hard times, but there are a lot of families and we don't know what they're going through. And so that's why I think just that, like, this is a universal thing that we should be talking to, with families who are experiencing stress, who are not experiencing stress. Um, because we probably don't actually know what kind of stress they're experiencing a lot of the time. So just being able to um, praise moments of connection that you see, right? So if a baby is particularly snuggly with their mom, I'll just kind of say, like, "Gosh, look how safe your baby feels with you." That's so great. Like you're really such a safe space for them. That's really important for their brain that they know that you're there for them, right? That took like 5 seconds. So even just reflecting back the things that they're already doing, right? Or if they're reading the book in front of you, or you're just like, man, you guys are good at this. Like, um, that praise of all the wonderful strengths that you see in a family can be really helpful.
We got a question in the Q&A box that I think is really timely, especially thinking of what we're seeing in Minnesota, what we saw in Chicago last fall, and are anticipating seeing again. So someone asked, I think about the babies who have not left their home due to ice. What are the effects of a baby not being exposed to the outside world or even going outside and seeing other people for an extended period of time?
So, I mean, this is not unlike COVID, right? This is not unlike what we saw with babies born during COVID. And again, as I reflected at the beginning of this talk, my headshot was taken during COVID when my child was an infant. My daughter was born in June 2020. And we had a lot of fears about that. Like, what's going to happen to all these kids who are like not seeing faces and they're only seeing masks? And are they going to develop? And I think unfortunately it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like in some ways we're seeing that some younger kids did really well. And it didn't impact their language or development. But I certainly have. And Mariana, I'd love to hear if you've had this experience too of seeing some kids who um, are pretty emotionally dysregulated after having been really isolated, or who have some developmental delays. So I think we're gonna continue to see it. I think we're going to see it again, just as we did with the impacts of COVID. I think we're going to see it again on the impact of families who are afraid to leave their homes. So thinking about, what are some ways that we can bring safe people into homes, right? So even if families aren't coming out into their community, can we find ways to safely go into homes? I know Durham, where I live, had a much smaller ice presence, but around Thanksgiving, we also had raids in our community. And we had a lot of folks going into people's homes, right? So thinking about home visiting programs, and promoting other things like that can be helpful. But I think we're certainly going to see an impact similar to what we saw with babies and children isolated during COVID.
I think also supporting families, right? I think part of the mixed bag is that some parents were able to provide that safety, whereas other parents were so stressed out that they didn't have that capacity, right? For whatever reason. Perhaps they were on their phones, or there were a lot of kids connected to media, and there wasn't as much of that connection. So how we support those families in being able to provide those nurturing environments despite this terrible thing that they're experiencing, is something else that we can do.
Thank you both for that. I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A box, and we are almost at time, so I'll go ahead and stop recording. If anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to put them